1 year after his deeply emotional retirement, Rafael Nadal did something completely unexpected. He picked up a tennis racket once again, and just like that, the whole tennis world stopped in its tracks. The 22-time Grand Slam champion, who had clearly declared he would never return to professional competition, quietly stepped back onto the court not for a comeback, but for something much more personal. The location was not a crowded stadium or an international tournament. It was his own academy in Mallorca, a place where his legacy keeps expanding far beyond trophies and titles. But what really surprised everyone was not only Nadal's return to the court. It was the person standing across the net from him. It was not another tennis legend nor a rising Spanish talent. It was Alex Eala, a 20-year-old Filipina player who had been training at Nadal's academy since she was only 13. A student shaped by his training system, a result of his tennis philosophy, and now a player skilled enough to share the court with the legend himself. Clips of their practice sessions spread rapidly across social media, collecting millions of views within hours. Fans were expecting high intensity. They anticipated Nadal's famous concentration and his unstoppable energy. What they did not expect was laughter. In the middle of a rally, something remarkable occurred. Nadal, the ultimate fighter known for his unbreakable focus, suddenly broke into a real, uncontrollable smile. It was a rare human moment that even his toughest opponents had rarely managed to draw out of him during his best years. Eala had achieved what many believed was impossible. She made Nadal laugh right in the middle of a rally. That single instant said everything. Across the Atlantic, world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka watched the video in complete disbelief. A player who had spent years competing at the highest level, chasing greatness and recognition, could only shake her head at what she was seeing. There was something different about this connection, something deeper than pure competition. What the world witnessed that day was not simply a practice session. It was a rare look into a special bond between a legend who had given his entire life to the sport and a young talent developed under his guidance. November 19, 2025. Mallorca, Spain. Exactly 1 year had passed since Nadal played the last match of his professional career at the Davis Cup Finals in Malaga. A farewell so moving that it brought millions to tears. For 12 months he had stayed completely away from the game, no matches, no training sessions, not even a casual practice hit. Instead, he focused on what mattered most to him, his family, his charitable foundation, and developing the next generation at his academy. But some links to the sport never really disappear. And on that peaceful court in Mallorca, with no audience and no pressure, Rafael Nadal reminded everyone that while his competitive career may have finished, his relationship with tennis is still far from complete. On this day, something changed. Rafael Nadal put on his shoes again, carefully taped his fingers out of long habit, and walked onto the indoor clay court at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. There were no cheering crowds, no bright flashing cameras, and no championship tension. This was not a comeback, it was not a contest, it was something far more meaningful. A quiet tribute to the sport that shaped his life, to the academy he created from nothing, and to the young players who would carry his legacy forward. Waiting for him on the opposite side of the net was Alex Eala. The 20-year-old Filipina had first come to the academy at just 13 years old. A shy but determined teenager from Manila, she arrived carrying nothing but a dream and a racket. Over the years, she developed not only as a player but also as a person on those very courts. Although she officially completed her program in 2023, the academy had always remained her home, and on this day, for the first time ever, she would share the court with her mentor. "It was so special for me," Eala would later say. "Obviously, training with Rafa is something that people and young kids can only dream about. It was such a pleasure to share the court with him." The session was recorded and later posted by Rafael Nadal himself on social media. His caption was simple but meaningful. "1 year later, it felt great to be back on a tennis court. It was great to practice with you, Alex. Next time I will be stronger." Within hours, the video went viral across the internet, attracting millions of views. Fans from around the world watched not for a competitive match but for a special moment. What they saw was something uncommon. The two left-handed players exchanged smooth, natural baseline rallies. Their timing felt effortless and their rhythm was almost poetic. But beyond the technique, it was the overall atmosphere that caught attention. Nadal was not the intense, battle-hardened competitor the world was used to seeing. He appeared free, relaxed, smiling, and even playful at times. It was a side of him that only a few people had ever seen, a legend completely at peace with the game he once ruled. The session was filled with memorable exchanges, small gestures, and quiet respect between mentor and student. But one moment stood out above everything else. Midway through one of the rallies, Alex Eala hit a sharply angled forehand that pulled Rafael Nadal way off the court. The point belonged to her, but what happened next made the moment truly unforgettable. Instead of a quiet acknowledgement or simple reset, Ella rushed forward, sprinting toward the net with her arms raised in a playful, almost childlike celebration. It was spontaneous, full of joy, and totally unexpected. For a split second, Nadal looked surprised, and then he laughed. Not a polite smile or a controlled grin, a full, genuine, unfiltered laugh. He threw his head back, and the sound echoed through the quiet indoor court, a moment so rare that it instantly felt historic in its own right. Years of intense competition, pressure-filled finals, and constant focus seemed to disappear in that single reaction. The King of Clay was no longer fighting for a title. He was simply enjoying the game. The clip spread across social media at incredible speed, shared millions of times within hours. Fans from every part of the world reacted strongly to what they had just seen. It was not just a rally, it was a rare glimpse into a side of Nadal that was seldom visible. "This is the Rafa we never get to see," one fan wrote. "Just a legend enjoying tennis with a young player he truly believes in." Another commented, "She made Nadal laugh, that's a win bigger than any trophy." What made the moment even more powerful was the sharp contrast. Throughout his entire career, Nadal had been the perfect example of intensity. His famous fist pumps, loud vamos calls, and laser-sharp focus on every single point. For him, emotion was almost always directed into competition. Joy like this in the middle of a rally was almost unheard of. For Ella, it meant the world. She had spent years at the Rafa Nadal Academy, learning not only how to hit a forehand or build a point but also how to think, how to fight, and how to behave like a true professional. Nadal was not just an idol for her. He was part of the environment that helped shape her. And now in this unplanned moment, she was not just his student. She was his hitting partner, his equal in that rally, someone who could surprise him, challenge him, and even make him laugh. It was validation in its purest form. The practice session itself was not a one-time event. It represented something much deeper, the result of years of quiet effort, early morning training, personal sacrifices, and strong belief. It was a full-circle moment, from a young girl arriving in Mallorca with only a dream to now sharing the court and a laugh with one of the greatest players the sport has ever seen. And in that instant, it felt like the start of something new, not just for her, but for Nadal's legacy beyond his playing days. It was the result of a relationship that had been quietly developing for nearly a decade. Alex first arrived at the Rafa Nadal Academy in 2018 when she was just 13 years old, a scholarship student from the Philippines, far from home, speaking very little Spanish and entering a completely new world where she knew no one. What she did have was strong determination. Day after day, she trained with some of the most talented young players in the world. She absorbed everything, the discipline, the daily routines, and the winning mentality. This was not only about improving her strokes. It was about understanding the philosophy that had turned Rafael Nadal into one of the greatest athletes in history, and over time, Nadal noticed her. He followed her progress quietly at first, a word here, a gesture there, and encouragement when it counted. As the years went by, that attention grew into something more meaningful. By 2025, Ella was no longer just a promising student. She was making serious waves on the professional circuit. Her breakthrough came at the Miami Open, where she stunned the tennis world with an impressive run to the semifinals. Along the way, she defeated 3 Grand Slam champions, including a victory that immediately raised her profile. Nadal was watching. Like millions of others, he followed her journey, but his reaction carried extra weight. On social media, he wrote, "We are extremely proud of you, Alex. What an incredible tournament. Let's keep dreaming." It was not just praise, it was personal. Later that year, when Ella won her first WTA title in Guadalajara, Nadal again showed his support publicly. "Congrats, Alex, for your first WTA title. I am happy and proud of what you are achieving for yourself and for the Philippines." The connection between them had clearly grown beyond a simple coach-student relationship. It was built on mutual respect, shared values, years of quiet observation, and deep belief in each other. Ella has often spoken about what makes Nadal special, not just his records but his character. "He is so grounded, and he has achieved more than anything I could ever dream of," she once said. "The fact that he is still so kind to everyone around here is something I really admire." That humility made a deep and lasting impression on her. And during that now viral practice session, it wasn't only rallies and laughter. There were also moments of genuine mentorship, small but important. At one point, Nadal stopped to give her specific advice, focusing on the finer details of her game. It wasn't a long speech or formal lesson, just a few words delivered with the same care and precision that defined his own career. Because even in retirement, Nadal wasn't just playing tennis, he was still teaching it. "He gave me some tips on my forehand and a few other small pieces of advice," Alex Eala revealed afterwards. They weren't major changes or lengthy explanations, just subtle adjustments. But coming from Rafael Nadal, even the smallest suggestion carried enormous value. These were the kind of fine details that only a 22-time Grand Slam champion would notice, the tiny margins that separate good players from truly great ones. The Rafa Nadal Academy itself recognized the moment as something special, posting the session online with a simple yet powerful message. Incredible to see him back on court, sharing his passion and knowledge. For Ella, it was nothing less than a full-circle moment. Years earlier, she had arrived as a wide-eyed teenager chasing a faraway dream. Now, she stood on the same court not as a student but as a professional ranked inside the top 50 in the world and the first Filipina in history to reach that milestone on the WTA Tour. It was no longer just about potential, it was proof. While much of the tennis world celebrated the emotional reunion between mentor and student, one particular viewer watched with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Aryna Sabalenka, the world number one. She has never hidden her respect for Nadal. Earlier that year at the Australian Open, she admitted how much his presence affected her. Playing in front of him wasn't just another match, it was nerve-wracking. The whole match I kept telling myself, "Don't look there, please don't look," she confessed with a laugh. Afterward, the competitive intensity turned into something more human. Sabalenka walked straight over to Nadal, her attitude changing instantly from dominant champion to devoted fan. "Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Can I take a picture with you, please?" she asked, smiling. It was a clear reminder that even the very best players in the world still look up to true greatness. And yet, while players like Sabalenka dreamed of impressing him, Nadal's attention had in many ways been quietly focused elsewhere. In Ella, he had witnessed her entire journey from the very beginning, the early struggles, the steady improvement, and the breakthrough moments. While the world was only beginning to notice her, Nadal had been watching for years, not as a distant spectator, but as someone who truly believed in her. He had celebrated her wins, supported her through tough times, and now, on the anniversary of his retirement, shared the court with her. For Aryna Sabalenka, the contrast was difficult to ignore. Despite her own dominance, multiple Grand Slam titles, and her position as world number one, she had never experienced that kind of personal connection with Rafael Nadal. Respect, yes, admiration, certainly, but not this, not something this close. When the footage of Nadal's practice session with Alex Eala spread around the world, Sabalenka's reported reaction was one of surprise mixed with deeper disbelief. According to people close to her, she couldn't fully understand it. Nadal, out of all possible choices, had returned to the court not with a fellow legend or a top champion, but with Ella, a player still building her own story. "I've done everything," Sabalenka has admitted in moments of frustration. "I've won Grand Slams, I've been number one, and still sometimes it feels like the crowd is cheering for someone else." That someone else effect, the phenomenon of packed arenas, huge fan energy, and global attention, has shifted the spotlight in surprising directions. And now, the growing bond between Nadal and Ella had added another layer to that story. But to see that moment only through comparison would miss the real meaning. Because what happened on that quiet court in Mallorca was more than just a viral video. It felt like a passing of the torch. For nearly 2 decades, Nadal had defined an entire era of tennis. His game, built on powerful topspin, relentless defense, and an unbreakable fighting spirit, set the standard, especially on clay. As a left-hander, he transformed what many considered a disadvantage into a dominating weapon. And now, across the net stood a player who carried echoes of that same identity. Ella is also left-handed. But more importantly, she reflects the same mindset, the same hunger, the same refusal to give up on any point, and the same belief that every rally can be won and every match can be fought until the end. In her, Nadal doesn't just see talent. He sees continuity, not a replacement, but a reflection of the values that defined his career. And perhaps that is why that moment mattered so deeply. Because on a quiet day, far from the noise of competition, one era didn't just end. It quietly reached forward and connected with its future. She relies on strong defense, patience, and sharp tactical thinking. She fights for every single point, no matter the score, and above all, she refuses to give up. She has that fire. One insider from the Rafa Nadal Academy said, "The same fire Rafa had at her age, you can't teach that, you're born with it." Alex Eala's 2025 season proved exactly that. In just 1 year, she climbed from world number 140 all the way into the top 50, a stunning rise that caught the attention of the entire tennis world. At the Miami Open, she amazed fans by defeating 3 Grand Slam champions in a single tournament run. In doing so, she became the first Filipina in history to break into the WTA top 50. It wasn't luck, it was belief, discipline, and that same fire that people couldn't stop talking about. As she prepares for the 2026 season with appearances at the Australian Open, another visit to Miami, the challenging clay court swing, and eventually the French Open, she carries more than just good form. She carries valuable lessons. "He gave me some tips on my forehand and a few small pieces of advice," Eala said, reflecting on that unforgettable session with Rafael Nadal. This is the first time I've ever hit with him in my life, and it's a memory that will last forever. And it will. For her, it is a personal milestone, a moment of true validation, and a memory that will remain part of her journey.